What's going on, Chris?
Because the poem that I'm going to start with is a poem that I wrote and read at Kenyon College this summer. And this is actually the poem that I read at our reading that culminated the week-long workshop. It was an amazing experience, and I started writing in this style after that and really just stopped like yesterday. So, and I ended up with like 50 pages of material just from this one poem that I wrote while there. So this, we were given a prompt, well, a series of prompts to choose from, sort of a choose-your-own-adventure thing. One day during the workshop, over lunch, we could do a number of things I can't remember, or write a Frank O'Hara lunch poem. And so this poem, and really everyone, because of this poem that I'm only going to read 3, and one of them is fairly long, so we'll see how that goes. They're all sort of under the auspices of Frank. So this one is called Personal Poem. Catch my breath a bit. Now when I'm walking around Kenyon, I'm thinking of that lunch poem, about how funny it would be if we only shit once a week. Because it's raining here, not cats and dogs. I don't know if I've ever said it's raining cats and dogs. If I said something like that now, I'd say skunks and spiders. That's what I have in my head right now. I have spiders in my head. Spiders, because Andy said the other night that he's always looking out for spiders around here. Then later I saw a web while we smoked on the porch outside the O'Connor house. And I mentioned it to him, said better look out, and pointed at the web, which had no spider, just a bug I don't know the name of. And when I pointed to the web, I remembering to tell him I saw a spider on Brad at the bar the other night. It was sort of still in a way that made it seem lost. And surely it was lost, and I cupped it in my palm, took it outside into the drizzle, and now it's raining again. It wasn't when I saw the skunk with Jeff and Jennifer, the skunk that skunked right toward us yesterday afternoon, when the sun showed up, and the skunk must have felt liberated in that flash of warmth like us when it rose to sniff the air, then skunked slowly off to sniff other air not wet with rain. It wasn't raining then, but now it's raining again, but harder than before. And now I'm thinking of that Frank poem, that particular one, because that's when I think I got Frank the first time. I mean, really got him. When I was on the phone with him, sort of, as he might say, alone in my apartment, alone in a new city, in a new state, with no one to talk to or have lunch with. And it was raining out, and my apartment was dark like I like it when I'm reading, the dark that drives my wife crazy, that tells her to tell me I'll go blind. Maybe I don't like it, maybe I just don't remember to turn on the light, maybe. But there's something about that kind of natural light, that gray middle-of-the-day rain light coming through the blinds that makes you feel like you're in a cabin on a big boat going somewhere exotic. And that's the kind of rain we have now, the kind of light walking around Kenyon through the rain on the way to lunch at the deli, where I have a bagel and lox that I just about finish before a couple folks show up. I can't remember their names, and I'm sad I can't remember their names, but happy they joined me. And we talk about potato chips and tattoos, music and movies, and then Andy joins us too. Maybe that's when we start talking about movies. And now I'm thinking of Frank again, who loved the movies. And I like to think loved the rain and sun the same. And that maybe that kind of thing just kind of killed him. But now alive and sitting at Kenyon having lunch at the deli, now we're in love with Birdman, with talking about Birdman and Whiplash and the ends of things. We're in love with the ends of things, the ends of movies, but also the ends of other things we don't talk about. I can tell we are in love with those things too. But when we leave, we don't walk out together. We all split up, take off at different times like airplanes lined up on a runway, but we're all going to the same place. And where I want to go is that old church on the hill, not because it's beautiful, it is, but I'm thinking of Frank and that first poem I fell in love with, that first poem I called up on the phone, had lunch with, when it was raining and my apartment was dark and I was alone. And now walking through Kenyon in that kind of rain, I remember he ended the poem with a Sunday and a church and a ploop, and I ended it with a laugh and loved the beginning of something and the end of something the same, and maybe got hungry enough to get out in the rain and get some lunch or something. But now, after just having lunch, maybe now I'll go check out the church on the hill to see what the lighting inside is like. Okay, this is called The New Bird. Now when I'm listening to what we've been calling the new bird sing what sounds like cheeseburger, cheeseburger, cheeseburger outside the window, because Sarah says it sounds like it sings cheeseburger, 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 while she looks through the window, while she works at her desk, while she listens, while imagine her whistling while she works. Sarah, who maybe if we were young in the 50s I would have called a bird, a nice bird, or a pretty bird, or something like that. Maybe look at that young bird over there, I might have said at a carnival somewhere in Kansas to some foolish friend with me. But we aren't living in the 50s, and South Louisiana isn't likely a lot like Kansas. So to try to eventually convince her to marry me, I just said, please, come hear me read at this Halloween reading. I'll be reading Dorothy Parker poems tonight, all dressed up like Dorothy Parker at a bar down the street. And now, that was nearly 5 years ago, so I guess it worked. But now we don't ever talk about Baton Rouge with all its jerks and corner drugstores, where all the young couples crowd around the red boxes all over town, or the newest movie about the oldest other time. Instead, we keep on like everyone, pretending we're different. We'll live forever if we just keep singing like a couple of street birds, like new birds, with our beaks full of cheeseburger, cheeseburger, cheeseburger. Okay, this is called The Living Room. This is for my daughter, Finn. Now when I'm Googling Degas to see if he had any pets, I'm wondering if Finn will dig the art museum. Finn, who I was thinking yesterday, might be Degas reincarnated. Or maybe his pet cat if he had a pet cat. Or one of his cats if he had a house of cats. Because one of Finn's first words was Degas, and she just couldn't stop. But now she's saying meow and just can't stop. She doesn't really say Degas anymore, but her little legs are in casts after the operation she had to have to remove her extra 2 pinky toes, one from each foot, the operation which sadly couldn't be avoided. So we decided we'd go and check out the art at the art museum to give her a good distraction. Because she was just about to start walking, but now the casts curl up from her feet all the way over her knees to her chubby thighs. She can't even stand, so it's like she's learning how to crawl again. And she's getting pretty good at crawling in her new cast, but now when I close my computer, after having learned nothing about cats and Degas, after giving up the quick scrolling scan down Wikipedia's page for Degas to see if he had any cats, Finn just sits there staring down at her left leg, watching me try my best to draw a sloppy blue dolphin arched over a cluster of 3 purple stars and a yellow half moon with a handful of Sharpies I finally found yesterday hiding zip-locked behind a stack of old scratch-offs in the desk drawer we've thrown so much junk in that now it's misshapen and hard to open and harder to close. And you can tell the moon I drew will smudge off soon after it's finished, that maybe it will look like a misshapen streak of lightning, that it'll be hard to see it as the moon it once was, as the moon I wanted it to be, but even harder to not see it as the lightning it will become, if there will be anything to see at all. And I didn't really see stars in my head or a moon at all before I drew the stars and the moon. I just drew stars and a moon, maybe because Finn's room is filled with fake stars and a moon, a little silver moon nightlight I bought when I was up at Kenyon College this summer. But now when I'm thinking of the stars, I'm thinking of winter, because I think of winter when I think of the little black house sitting so quiet in the corner of her room, the little black house made of paper with pinpricks poked into the roof to let the light inside the house grow its own stars. And now when I'm reminded of how much I love the idea of a house growing stars, of how much I love the idea of the light that grows inside any home growing a sky, its own sky to hang its own stars, now I'm thinking of the old friend who sent that little black house to Finn, the old friend who lives inside a memory that looks like a little black house, that lives inside the little black sky that the little house grows, a sky that is hard to open and harder to close. And now I'm thinking of all the time I have spent drifting in those kinds of skies, drifting so long that so much had to be left behind, so much that all that hangs there now must be objects of memory, locked inside a box, shaped like a little black house, hard to open, inside a sky, harder to close. And now when I'm thinking of that old friend, the artist who started off drawing, then switched to painting for years before taking up sculpture, who manipulated fabric and found objects, who had to think hard about how to open and close those skies growing inside her, now when I'm thinking again about how much I didn't think about moons and stars, that I just drew a half moon and 3 stars just because, now I think I know I did it because of those kinds of skies. But I did see a dolphin swim through my head, swimming, I think, toward a setting sun or something for some reason, not because I'm one of those people who love dolphins. I mean, I don't hate dolphins or anything. I have this friend who hates dolphins, though, which I think is kind of weird. Why would you hate a dolphin? I don't hate dolphins, but I don't just walk around thinking of dolphins or have any dolphin figurines or anything. But for some reason, I always have sea creatures in my head when I think of Finn. And the sun is always about to set, and for some reason it's often a dolphin that I see, a single dolphin, and it's swimming toward that setting sun. At least that's the kind of light falling on the waves. That is the feeling I get. So that's the image I had in my head when I started drawing the dolphin, when I thought it would be nice to draw something for Finn before we go to the museum to see if they have any Degas. But now when I'm finished scribbling in the blue body, I look down, to wonder a bit at my work, and then I think I see that Finn is wondering at my work too, but maybe she's just looking past that new wonder of color and cast to the tips of her toes poking out. And now I'm wondering if she knows she will never see 2 of her toes again, And now I'm thinking of her mother, and now of her mother's brother, that he was born with 2 extra pinky toes too, that the progressive polydactyl gene runs in my wife's family. Now when I'm thinking of my wife's family, I'm thinking of her parents, who were down from Illinois recently to help out with Finn, to see us through the surgery, to help start the recovery process. And that's when we started taking Finn out on these little trips to distract her from the constant annoyance of casts. And the first thing we did was go for a long drive in the new Nissan they helped us buy. And one of the stops my wife had mapped out was the house where Degas lived when he lived in New Orleans. And now when I'm thinking of driving down Esplanade looking for the French flag, while my wife and her mother asked Finn over and over again what a cat says, I'm reminded of how pissed my father-in-law had gotten because I wrote a poem for his wife on her birthday and he got himself drunk and didn't get her anything. And that morning he apologized, a teary apology, but later in the car looking for the French flag, he just wouldn't look over at me or the road, wouldn't barely speak to anyone. And when we passed the flag on his side and didn't get a good look because we were going too fast, we had to turn around. But we didn't stop, didn't really even slow down, just kept going because the new restaurant we were going to for lunch was about to open. And now I think that's what we do. We just keep going. And behind us and on either side of us, there are things we can choose to leave behind or take with us. So we just kept going, and I just kept taking with me every meow Finn could meow in the back seat. And now I'm thinking of the way her mouth tightens up before she says what a cat says. I'm thinking about how much it looks like the Tin Man on The Wizard of Oz trying to say oil can with his jaw rusted shut. And now when I'm thinking about the Tin Man, I'm thinking about chicken pox. About having chicken pox, because chicken pox are for watching The Wizard of Oz 100 times, and for learning how to be miserable, for learning how to fear flying monkeys. But now I'm thinking of Finn, who now will never know that itchy misery, because the pediatrician who vaccinated her for chicken pox the other day had to give her the shot in her tiny bicep because of her casted legs. And now I remember wondering on the way home from the doctor's office with Finn content in the back seat with the window with its magic of moving trees. I remember asking myself what other miseries might we leave behind and what new miseries lie ahead. And now in the car on the way to the art museum, Finn is content again, but it's not raining like it should be, and it's not afternoon like it should be. It really should be a rainy afternoon when visiting the art museum for the first time. It really should at least be raining, but it's not raining and it's not afternoon. It's morning, and the morning sun is already hot. But when we get there, we get this really great parking spot right up front under a long line of live oaks by the bayou. But really where the bayou becomes a kind of pond, a city park where people go to kayak and paddle boat and look up over the trees at the museum that looks older than it is, but as old as it should. An art museum should look really old, looming over the trees like a second sun, like a dormant gray star all cracked up from falling hard to the hard earth, laughing and crying its column of cries, and laughs and cries and laughs. And we too are cracking up inside, me and my wife, when we take Finn inside the art museum and tell the docent for grad students, then show her the old IDs we still carry to get in cheap for such occasions. And she squints at the aging IDs, then up at us, but Finn waves high so the docent looks down, and the dolphin on her cast dangling below the safety bar of the stroller jumps over the moon, over the stars, over an ocean of invisible waves. And we ask Finn, what does a cat say? And of course her learned response paws the docent enough to let us in cheap, to let us be the poor couple we are, but also a couple of poor students with a baby meowing through the museum. And now when I'm thinking of myself as a student, I'm thinking about this thought I often carry around with me now, that it is the responsibility of the student to carve an S into every exit sign between the I and the T. And it is the responsibility of the student to not get caught, to never get caught. And now I think when we leave, we'll exit the entrance. But now as we meow through the museum looking for Degas, I'm wondering if Finn will say Degas if she sees one of his paintings, or if she'll say meow, or maybe there will be this perfect painting of a ballerina and a cat, and Finn will say Degas and meow, and then my wife and I will just kind of know the kind of sky Finn will get lost inside. Maybe we'll somehow know that, maybe not. Maybe we'll just see inside that patch of sky hanging over her that a little star is growing from a little house, and that already inside that house there are so many cat-shaped lights and so many cast-shaped lights, so many dolphins jumping over so many moons that shape the light, and so many other lights, and all of it light we will never see, not really. And now it's clear there is no Degas to be seen in this museum, because we're meowing through the rooms on the second floor, and if Degas was here, he'd be here, on the second floor, the freezing cold quiet of the second floor that makes Finn shiver. He'd be here hanging out with the other impressionists. But all I can see are the expressions painted on the faces of other people passing by, the faces staring at Finn's cast, and Finn is waving hi at every one of them. And now they are smiling and waving back, but now when I see them I imagine what they might be thinking. I wonder if they think Finn is in cast because of something we did, or something we didn't do. And now I'm reminded of what I learned about Degas, about his life and his work on Wikipedia when I went hunting for cats. I'm reminded now of all the phrases that stuck out, and now when I'm remembering that he mastered movement, not the same movement Finn was learning how to master before her surgery, but before her casts were cast, and will have to learn how to master again, but that he mastered the painting of movement, the movement of ballerinas. And now when I see another face furrow at Finn, I am reminded of his voyeuristic fascination with pain inflicted on ballerinas. And now when I'm trying my best to see inside those faces passing us by, when I'm trying to see between the lines in those faces that try to see so far inside Finn, they might as well be brushing up against her cheek. Maybe what I see is a kind of human isolation, the kind of human isolation Degas was concerned with, Degas who rejected the term impressionist, who wanted to be a realist. And now when I'm reminded of that serious look he had on his face when I saw a self-portrait on Wikipedia, now I'm reminded of Finn, who gets this certain look sometimes, that's kind of the same as his, and maybe hiding somewhere inside that look is the need to speak, as if every now and then she needs to stop to reject the term impressionist, like she wants to be a realist, like she knows her own mind, like when she does the thing where she points at something among a pile of somethings on top of the fridge or on top of the file cabinet, and every time you pick one of the somethings up, she shakes her head no and grows that look, that painted face, that Degas self-portrait look, until you pick up the something she wants, and her mouth dances on its toes. And now, at the art museum, when I am thinking of movement, I am thinking of isolation and of the movement of her mouth when something dances up from inside and makes her smile. But now I'm thinking of her isolation. I'm thinking of her inability to move for a few weeks, but also of the woman she will grow into, in the world she will grow into, the world the woman she will grow into. And now I'm reminded of Degas again, Degas who isolated himself, Degas who became such an anti-Semite, he couldn't hope to move beyond the unwritten laws of his world, Degas who objectified women, Degas who now seems like a painting of himself lost inside his own slow-moving world. And now when I'm thinking of movement and Finn, I'm thinking about casts, about her legs in those casts that go all the way up, the orthopedist said, so they wouldn't fall off, to let her just figure it out. And now I'm reminded again how quickly she figured it out, how she just took off crawling on the hospital floor, and then she even started picking herself up when we got home, holding onto the couch to stand on her toes like a ballerina. But you could tell it kind of hurt, so she stopped and didn't really try anymore. But now I'm thinking of Degas again, Degas and his ballerinas, and how much ballerinas in the past have been casted like characters in a play that plays as long as history will play out for us, and that the ballerinas Degas painted were prostitutes, and they were all always painted pretty in pink and white. And now when I'm lost inside all of this, the only thing I want to find inside it is how wonderful it would be if Finn ended up a ballerina, or a painter of ballerinas, or a painter of cats and ballerinas and Degas, or just someone that will somehow be able to see beyond any caste anyone can wrap her up with, and that for her history will be a play to be performed, and that the world she'll move through will be like her living room, where she will sit when we get home, where she will sit and stare at her little toes poking out at the ends of her casts. And I hope some living rooms from now, will extend out into the street, maybe some kind of living room that keeps going down the street, a living room that lets you take everything with you, a living room that lets you take the living room with you down the street until the living room extends into other living rooms, until everything is like a little black house that grows its own sky, or at least some stars from all the lights inside. But now at the art museum, when Finn sees this painting of a cat beside the Cornell boxes, she gets pretty excited and says what a cat says, and holds up her stuffed kitty as if to ask if it can go inside the painting. Now when we meow through the art museum on our way to exit the entrance, like magic, in the corner of every painting, a cat appears to be moving its mouth to say her name.